Good morning. This is Tom Baugh again, Master Gardener since 2003 and Master Gardener here in Fauquier County. Originally became a Master Gardener up in Maryland. I've been here in Fauquier County for about 6 years now. So today we're going to talk about a very favorite of mine because it's a winter perennial. Most people don't realize that there are plants that actually bloom, not just grow and stay evergreen, but bloom during the winter. So what's not to like about that, quite frankly? Okay, the Hellebores, I like to call them the winter's charmer because they do bloom, and they bloom all winter long. It's not just for a week or two or a couple of days or something, but they will stay open for a long time. There are two different basic varieties. One of them is commonly referred to as the Christmas rose, and that obviously kind of blooms from sometimes late November through early January. And then the Lenten rose starts blooming at that time, and there's a lot of beautiful colors in that one. And it will bloom for 3 or 4 months. And I'll show you some of the differences too on those. Some of the characteristics that also make Hellebores very nice to have and grow is they're virtually deer-proof. They have enough toxin in their leaves that the deer will not eat them. And I've never seen any of my dogs try to eat them either, so don't worry about that. Some of them might nibble on it, but you know they're going to get that bad taste and stop real quick. There is some heavier concentration of toxins in the roots, but you've got to chew on quite a bit of them to really start feeling sick. Okay. They are also a natural barrier to moles and voles, so you can kind of plan your garden to a certain extent. If you want to keep something away from the moles and the voles, you can kind of maybe do a ring of Hellebores, and that will naturally kind of protect what's on the inside of that ring. To get back into the history a little bit, they have a long and storied past. Many stories all the way through history, even back to Rome and Greece. Medieval times, it was believed to be a witch repellent. So people would plant Hellebores underneath their windowsills and around their doorways to keep the witches out of their house. Sorcerers also believed that if they harvest the Hellebore on a moonless night and hung it up to dry, then they could use it to fly and become invisible. So that gives you a little idea of some of the history, and there's tons of more stories of that sort that I could tell. The European, Arabic, colonial America, all those apothecaries used it, classified it as an herb. It was a purgative to kind of help you if you had stomach problems and that sort of thing, and it also induced labor. Another little common thing that they used to do is if they had a cow that had a bad cough, they could take a little bit of the root and put it in their dewlap, and that would cure the cough. So there's all sorts of interesting little tidbits like that to make it even more interesting. Okay. Oh, and the Native Americans mixed it. It actually came from Europe. Eurasia is where it originated. It probably spread via the Roman legions that marched all over Europe during their empire days. Native Americans then they'll picked it up when we brought it here to Americas, and would mix it with some raccoon grease and use it for a toothache. Who would think? Okay, let's get a little bit more into the science of the Hellebores to kind of give you some differences that are important. You'll need to come in close on this. There's two basic kinds. There's a caulescent, C-A-U-L-E-S-C-E-N-T, and an aucaulescent. Just put an A in front of the other one. The aucaulescent is examined as an example right here. If you look real closely, you can see that this flower is coming right out of the ground on its own stem. Okay, that's the aucaulescent. These are more hardy because obviously they have less vegetation and flower above ground for the freezing from the air. This is an example of a caulescent where you've got a stem that comes up. You see how this stem comes up here, and then off of that the flowers bloom. This is more typical of the Lenten rose. As the weather gets a little warmer during the year in late January and February, these can thrive and grow without getting usually hurt too bad with any kind of late freeze. Some of the foliage is also quite pretty, and even a better one. Let me see if I can find my, there it is. This one over here has some really beautiful foliage. Dust off some of the fallen flowers. You can see how pretty that leaf is. You do see, can see some damage sometimes. You can see right here, like this is an old leaf, and sometimes you can see some of that damage around the edge. So they will have some damage sometimes, but again, they're able to. Another good one that's got a little bit of damage on the leaf. It's kind of interesting in that any of the gardeners that have started growing these have pretty much admitted that they've become bewitched by them. They are so popular. They're a little more expensive because they take longer to grow up and be ready to sell. So sometimes you'll see them, you know, for sale, and you say, wow, that's more expensive than all the other plants this guy's selling and everything, but that's why. So it takes more time, so more years. Okay, different flowers. You have single petal ones. You want to come in here close and get some of those. A lot of spots and stuff in these flowers. They can be white with spots. Another one over here is very nice. Even though it's a single flower, it still has so much character in it with the darker sepals in the middle. This one's kind of finished. There we go, that's a little bit better. That's a nice double flower. And then, let's see if I can find a good one here. There we go. Pure white, but double. Oops. Now they will, when the sun comes out, they perk up a lot more. But they are pretty much known for being a pendulous flower that hangs down. Part of that is to kind of stay warmer, because that points the flower towards the warmer ground versus the colder air. So that's another, but they're developing more and more species that are more upright in their blooms. So as we get more of those, it'll be nice. I have about 20 different varieties in here, because again, it's bewitched me. Here you can see another one that's very pretty. A lot of nice purple in there. It's a single. This one's one of the ones with the nice foliage. And then this one's my pride and joy. Yellow is an unusual color. You can see the foliage is actually more a brighter yellow, or green too, and more palmate, more divided in the leaves. This is gone, oh, here's a better one. Oops, here we go. No, that's still not. This is yellow. When it opens up at first, and then now that it's pollinated, you see the seeds starting to form. And once it's pollinated, it turns a light green. So that's kind of a sampling. Let's see if I can get over here to another one. Fall in here without stepping on somebody. Here's a good one. Now, who would not like to see that all winter long? It's kind of important to get the right placement, right place, right plant, right place as usual. You don't want them to be exposed to north or west cold winds in the wintertime. So you can see here, I've got mine nicely protected by evergreens that divide it between the north and where my hellebores are. So everything to the north is nicely protected by an evergreen. And then over here you have the same situation basically from the west. Although these have leafed out now, there are still some evergreens in there, here and there, that there's enough growth there to protect them from a cold west wind too. So finding the right place is very important. You can divide them also. After a few years you can divide them like you would any other plant. Dig them up and cut the root balls separately, and then plant some more somewhere else. Mine have kind of spread on their own, and I have so many in here, they've just filled the thing without having to divide them. So that's worked very well. So hopefully you can see now why Hellebores are such a nice perennial to have. This is the best time to plant them, by the way. And you should see them in the nurseries, probably not in the big box stores like Walmart and Lowe's and Home Depot and everything, but you'll see them in nurseries. I know Meadows Farms normally sells them, and I'm sure Merrifield has a lot of them. There is a Pine Knots farm here that you can buy from when you have the big plant sales. When COVID finally gets out of our hair, they'll come back, and Pine Knots Farms is a nationally known hellebore grower, and they are right here in Virginia. So a lot of times you can pick them up at like Green Springs when they do their plant sale, and Leesburg when they do their flower and garden festival. So I highly recommend them. They're nice. They're pretty well carefree too. You put them in, plant them, and you really don't have to do anything to them after that. You'll notice mine are, again, they like the shade, obviously. I need to make sure I mention that before I forget it. So they like the shade, and the leaf litter from the deciduous trees then falls down in there and continues to fertilize them on its own. So like I said, it's pretty much a self-propelled plant. Thank you.